A person opens an online shopping website looking for a new pair of shoes. He scrolls through a free option, compares a couple of prices, then closes the tab without buying anything. Nothing unusual. A few hours later, he opens Instagram and there they are, the exact same shoes. He doesn't think much of it. Then he opens YouTube. The shoes are there again. Later, he opens Facebook. Once again, the same shoes. Now it starts to feel a little strange because that's usually when people start asking the same question. Is my phone listening to me? It's the question that's been around for years. Some people are convinced the answer is yes, others say it's just internet myth. So, who's actually right? When I decided to make this video, the first thing I wanted to know was, is this claim actually true? So I started looking into it, and honestly, that's where things got confusing. The more I looked, the more it felt like people weren't even talking about the same thing. On one side, there were people sharing experiences that sounded almost impossible to ignore. They would talk about a product, and not long after, they would start seeing ads for it. On the other side, researchers were saying there wasn't convincing evidence that major companies were secretly using your phone's microphones to target ads. At first, that sounded like the mystery was solved, but it wasn't, because one question still refused to go away. If our phones aren't secretly listening, then why do those ads seem to know us so well? To understand what's really happening, we need to start with the claim that started this question. So, is your phone really listening to you? Based on the evidence we have today, there isn't convincing evidence that major companies are secretly using your phone's microphone to target ads. And honestly, if that was the end of the story, this video would have ended right here. But it doesn't, because answering that question created a much bigger one. If it's not the microphone, then how do those ads get so accurate? Think about it. You don't buy the shoes, yet somehow they seem to follow you everywhere. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. It's almost like someone already knew what caught your attention. And that's when I realized maybe we have been focusing on the wrong thing. Maybe the microphone isn't the real mystery. Maybe the real mystery is how much your phone already knows about you without ever listening to a single conversation. And that's where the things get little interesting. So, what exactly does your phone know about you? Probably a lot more than most of us realize, not because it's secretly listening, but because every time we use our phones, we leave behind tiny pieces of information. The website we visit, the videos we watch, the products we spend a little longer looking at, the apps we open every day. Individually, none of that seems like a big deal. But together, it starts to build a surprisingly detailed picture, not of what you said, but of what you do. And it turns out companies don't always need to hear your conversation when your digital behavior is already telling them so much. Think back to the shoes. You never bought them, but you clicked on them. You spent time looking at them. Maybe you compared different colors. Maybe you checked the prices more than once. To you, it felt like nothing. To an advertisement system, those are signals, tiny clues that say this person might be interested. And once enough of those clues come together, those ads stop feeling random. They start feeling personal. Not because your phone heard your conversation, but because it learned from your behavior. But that's create another question. If those signals are created on one website, how do they suddenly show up somewhere completely different? After all, you looked at the shoes on an online store, not on Instagram, not on YouTube. So how did the ad get there? That was the next clue to understand. You might think when you open a website, you're only connecting to that website. But that's not always the case. The more you look into it, the more you realize that behind the scene, the small pieces of code from other companies can load too. You usually never notice them. The page looks exactly the same. Everything feels normal. But behind the scene, those companies can learn that someone visited that page. Now, that doesn't automatically mean they know your name or that a real person is watching you. Most of the time, they are simply collecting information linked to an identifier. Think of it like a visitor badge. It doesn't necessarily say who you are, but it helps a system recognize I have seen the same device or web browser before. So when you spend a little longer looking at those shoes, that interest didn't always stay with the shopping website. In many cases, it could also become part of the information used by advertisement platform to decide which ad might be worth showing later. Suddenly, seeing those shoes on Instagram doesn't seem so mysterious anymore. But this raises another question. If these companies can recognize the same browser or device, how are they doing that? Because a website and an app are two completely different places. So, what connects them? That's where the story takes another turn. And the answer starts with something most of us never heard of: tracking pixel. Despite the name, it isn't something you can actually see. In fact, most people interact with them every single day without ever realizing it. They are designed to stay quietly in the background, and their job is actually much simpler than most people imagine. When something happens on a website, like viewing a product, adding it to your cart, or completing a purchase, a tracking pixel can quietly let an advertisement platform know that the action happened. That's it. For something with a name like tracking pixel, it sounds much more dramatic than it actually is. It isn't recording your screen or secretly listening to your conversation. It's simply passing along a small piece of information. Now, on its own, that probably doesn't sound very important. But what if the same advertising platform isn't receiving information from just one website? What if it's receiving information from thousands of them? That's where things starts to change. Because at that point, it isn't just one website anymore. They are all connected to the same advertising platform, even if they have nothing else in common, which also means that tracking pixel isn't really making any decisions. It's only passing the information along. But if that's true, who's actually receiving all of it? And once that information gets there, how does the system decide that the shoes should appear on your screen instead of thousands of other ads it could have shown? Because someone, or rather something, is making this decision. The tracking pixel has already done its job. It passed the information along, but information doesn't magically turn into an advertisement. It has to go somewhere first, and that's where everything we have been talking about finally starts to connect. The next time you open Instagram or press play on a YouTube video, everything feels instant. You tap the video, you start scrolling, and within moments an advertisement appears. It all happens so naturally that we rarely stop to think about what had to happen before that ad reached our screen. The truth is, before you ever see that advertisement, a decision has already been made. And it isn't simple one. The platform isn't choosing between just two or three ads. Depending on the situation, there could be hundreds or sometimes even thousands of advertisers hoping their ad is the one that's appear on your screen. So how does it decide? It doesn't ask, will this person definitely buy these shoes? Nobody can answer that with certainty. Instead, it asks a much more practical question. Out of all the ads I could show this person right now, which one are they most likely to pay attention to? That might sound like a small difference, but it's actually the reason these ads can feel so personal. The system isn't trying to read your mind or predict your future. It's simply making the best decision it can with the information it already has. So if you spend time comparing those shoes, check the price more than once, and left without buying them, showing you that same pair is no longer a random choice. Based on everything the system has learned so far, it's simply the strongest candidate. And when that prediction happens to be right, it doesn't feel like a prediction anymore. It feels like your phone somehow knew what you were thinking. But that's where another question appears. Everything we have followed so far started with the website. So why does the same thing happen after you close the browser and open an app instead? Because if website were only part of the story, what's happening inside the app you use every single day? By now, we have followed the trail from shopping website to tracking pixel to advertisement platform and finally to the apps we use every day. But what about the phone itself? After everything we have uncovered, it's easy to assume the phone must be collecting every possible detail about us. The reality is a little more complicated. Your phone can share certain kind of information with apps, but only within the limits of the platform, the permission you have granted, and the privacy protection that are in place. Some apps may know your approximate location if you have allowed it. Some can learn basic information about your device. Some can measure how you interact with their apps or whether an advertisement led you there, but that doesn't automatically mean every app can access everything on your phone. And it certainly doesn't mean your phone microphone is secretly recording every conversation to decide which ad you will see next. That's an important distinction because once you understand it, the original mystery starts to look very different. Think back to the shoes at the beginning of this video. They seemed almost impossible to explain. It felt as if your phone had somehow listened to you, read your thoughts, or known exactly what you want. But after following every clue, the picture looks very different. The system didn't need to hear your conversation. It didn't need to read your mind. It simply collected through every signals over time to make a prediction that happened to be surprisingly accurate. And that's the part you find most fascinating. The ad don't feel personal because the system knows everything about you. They feel personal because it often knows just enough. Maybe that's why this myth has survived for so many years. Not because our phone are secretly listening, but because a really good prediction can feel almost so identical to mind reading. So, is your phone really listening to you? Based on the evidence we have today, there isn't convincing evidence that major companies are secretly using your microphone to target advertisement. But after everything we have uncovered, maybe that was never the most interesting question. The most interesting question is how much can be learned without listening at all. And once you realize that, those shoes don't seem mysterious anymore. They become a reminder that sometimes the strongest prediction don't come from hearing what we say, they come from quietly learning what we do.